All right. So, we're going to talk a little bit. I'm going to move this, see if I can move this. We're going to talk about a little bit about first do a little bit of a survey as to what your biggest performance concerns are, so we can focus the conversation on what is on your agenda. And then we'll talk a little bit about the engineering model, performance engineering model, and really what the 6 keys are, and how can you evaluate performance, and where to focus to get the best potential improvement. And then we can maybe do some Q&A after that, and talk about takeaways. So that's kind of the agenda for today. If you, since like I said, we have not a very large group here, feel free to unmute yourself. And if you have, question that comes up as we're having a conversation, feel free to, interrupt me or whomever's talking and ask the question, so we can focus on what's going to have the biggest benefit for you in this information. Or you can use the chat. I'll try to check the chat periodically. Okay. All right. So I'm going to do some polls here first, and try to get a little bit of an idea about what is the biggest performance concerns that you all have. Let's see, where's my polls? Polls, here we go. All right. So first, I have some general questions, right? Well, what do you currently consider to be your biggest challenge? Is it in lead generation, getting a consistent flow of opportunities? Is it in qualifying opportunities? Is it in closing? What, close rates lower than you would like it to be? Is it keeping your team consistently motivated, or in how you get continuous improvement in training or coaching?
So I'm with all of the above on that.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, that's an easy one for me. It's like every one of those things on there I see struggling with. Qualifying is a big thing for us. We'll get a lead, go off on a tangent, and throw a pile of resources at it before it's really qualified. It was one of the first things I saw starting with Compass, is we really need to dig deep into qualifying, because that'll cut your time by 3/4. You know what I mean? If you're not chasing wild goose chases.
Yeah. Now, do you sell through distribution, or are you
we have both? Yeah, we have both. So there's a lot of distribution where they'll be out gathering leads, bringing them back to us. But again, if the sales guys aren't doing the due diligence in terms of making sure it's a qualified leader, asking what is the budget, what is the time frame, the scope of the project. Sometimes I'm going to say they get off on a tangent and you can't see the trees for the forest. And all of a sudden you give them the solution to send a rocket to the moon where all they wanted was an airplane.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sure our guys will chime in on that. I think they've muted right now. They're probably hiding from me, but I'm sure they'll agree with me.
Yeah. So when you're dealing with distributors now, you're really subject to their ability to qualify properly, and they're just coming to you for a quote, but your own team too. So sometimes it's like with existing customers too, you should have a much higher close rate with existing customers. And
right.
That's one thing that we don't always do is separate that out. What is your close rate with existing customers versus new? And because they should be significantly different. But so it looks like we've got a pretty even one of each, kind of qualifying, closing, and continuous improvement in coaching. Okay, that's great. Okay, I'm gonna
Hey, Ken.
Yeah.
I I have a little different I kind of agree with this. This is Mel, but one of the things that I've struggled with um is more of a macro approach to it, and that making sure that the sales system that we're using, all right, is effective
Yeah.
and which comes before lead generation, qualifying, closing. It's making sure that the system is based on best practices. Everybody's following it. There's a discipline, and then you get into the lead generation to quant. So it's a little bit of the more of a macro approach. That was always been my concern. That I don't care how good you are at closing, but if the system doesn't work and everybody's not following the system in terms of best practices and so on, you got a real fundamental problem.
Yeah, no, I totally. But there's really systems that are involved in every aspect of sales, including lead generation. But
Yeah,
what is your system to qualify? And if
yeah,
if your challenge is really in closing, then what I tell people is, how well are you qualifying the opportunities? And so I think that that's really where you need to focus. I mean, it could be that your opportunities aren't the right ones for what you have to offer, but ordinarily when there's a closing problem, qualifying is really where you need to look. And that's what Sean was talking about.
right.
And that's spot on. And so that is your sales process. That
Hmm.
really is in your sales process. And then
That's right.
when you look at that, this is what we're going to talk about today, because you probably, as Sean was saying, they in Ohio they have a mixture of people. Some are seasoned, and so there obviously are some that are doing quite a bit better. And what's their close rate, and what is it that they're doing
Exactly.
that you know should be replicated? And then
That's
whoever
right.
put down continuous improvement, that's where you want to look. You see, in my industry, people are like, yeah, we can provide you sales training, but the first thing to look at is, all right, where do people really need to be skilled up to have the biggest impact? And if it's really in how they're qualifying, then we want to take a look at what are the exemplars doing
Yeah,
that is different and makes them top producers. So, and then you train everyone else up
exactly.
on where those gaps are. Okay, great. That's awesome. So that's very helpful. I'm going to go now launch a different, more specific poll here. Okay, so I'm giving you more options. So you can pick as many as you want here, right? Are your salespeople reactive and not proactive? That may not be the case since lead gen wasn't selected, but are they complaining about pricing pressure from customers? Are they too dependent on your biggest customer? Are they spending too much time with lower value customers, or existing customers? And the close rate's too low. That's obviously something we talked about. Um, Too reliant on independent distributors. Sales cycles too long. Strategically important products or services aren't getting appropriate attention, or they spend too much time on administrative activities. So, uh, okay, reactive. Everybody listed that. So let me see. Okay, so 4 people said reactive. Um, Pricing, 1, 2, too dependent on largest. This is common in manufacturing. There's always the 80-20 rule going on,
Yeah,
and then the question is, do you have like tier 3 customers that could be tier 2 or tier 1 that require more attention, or do we need to go out and get new ones that are more representative of your tier 1, tier 3s? And then too much time on existing customers, too much time with low value. And again, that gets to how you're evaluating your customers and helping them with where they're spending their time, and trying to find ways to either say no to lower value customers, or address them with less time, maybe with inside sales folks instead.
But I always
Sale,
found if you spent less time with the lower value customers who potentially could become higher value customers, you're cutting your own nose off. Like after 30 years, I would give whoever called in as much time as I could possibly give them, get them a proposal in the hopes that they weren't going to close tomorrow or next week or next month. But 2 years down the line, they would hand that to somebody, because capital equipment for us was a cycle of anywhere from 6 months to 5 years, depending on how the dice rolled. So, I used to pump up 300 quotes a year at my last job, where the average guy in our department was 100 quotes. And all I was doing was planting seeds for the future. So I'm not a big believer in that 80-20 rule. I think you have to spread as much of it over everybody, like a big blanket, rather than concentrating on 80 and 20. I just find if you spend, if you give a lot of your time to a big portion of those people, you'll get returns years down the road.
yeah.
If that makes sense with you guys, but that was my philosophy: was kick open the door with a shotgun, keep shooting till you kill somebody. I used to use that for 20 years and it worked.
Yeah. Okay, so again, so now the lead gen really comes being reactive versus proactive. When I look at that, because that's four people had indicated that was a concern. Is that really with regards to lead generation? Because nobody picked that at in the first poll, or is it being more proactive with existing customers and really addressing making sure that you're cultivating multiple allies, that you are taking advantage of opportunities, being more of a resource than just a vendor. And so where is that? So and then close rates again came up. Four people selected that. Sales cycle, now sales cycle, to me, that's more of a lead gen issue, right? And I tell people, I was talking to a customer the other day about that, and they were in a new construction environment where they had to get in early, and the sales cycle was long because these were big developments and they had to get permitting. And so a lot of these things where they had some initial engagement, they had to wait until the projects get permitted and funded, and that's a long sales cycle. And I've had other clients where they're in the pharmaceutical marketplace and they want to get in early, but how long does it take to get an FDA approval? Sometimes it's 3 years. Okay, so if your sales cycle is 3 years, it's not what you're doing today. If you're in the trough of the roller coaster, it's what you did 3 years ago. And that is a lead gen problem, because if you need to be consistently putting stuff in the pipeline, or 3 years from now, you're going to be feeling the pain. And so we need to be paying attention to that to make sure the opportunities are consistent. Okay. And then administrative, a lot of times that's take a look at what are your top producers doing to quickly get all those administrative things done so they have more time to be in front of prospects closing deals. Okay. All right. So this is really great information. All right. So the 6 keys, what are they? Okay. Number 1, expectations and feedback. Okay. How are you setting expectations with in the first place? What do you expect from your sales team and everyone that's involved in sales? You know, what do you expect for market share, or what do you expect for you know, existing or new? You know, are you expecting them to grow the revenue from existing customers? Which ones? Or are you expecting to bring in a certain amount of net new customers? Do you expect them to be selling, you know, where you expect the best growth to be in selling which products or services to which market? Do you expect them to increase their gross margin? Do you expect them, and all this comes from activities. You know, what is your expectation for what they should be doing and how? And then how do you provide them with feedback? How are you showing them how they're doing against those expectations? Okay, that's key number one. I saw that there was something in the chat. Let's see. Nope. Okay. All right. Key two, systems, tools, and resources. How are you getting that data to give them the feedback? And, you know, are you using a CRM? Are you getting the information out of it, and information that comes from your ERP systems or customer information to show them how they're performing? Do you have the right customer information? You know, there's been a lot of innovation in list generation and contact data, but you know, most of you are not you know, Fortune 500 companies where you have a lot of resources to invest in market research. But what do you know about the marketplace, right? And you know, I know you in Compass, you guys are in Ohio, but you're also in you know, other parts of the country, you know, California and Texas, right? So that those are specific areas, and then you know, you're in 10 different markets. So you know, how do you help them with what you expect in the areas where you operate, but then are you giving them information about what the market is in those specific areas, and and who to focus on, and then with how they're expected to prospect for net new or work with existing customers. You know, are you providing them with resources to be able to do that effectively? And then, as Mel said, what's the sales process? Okay. Key three, incentives and consequences. Okay. You know, salespeople are motivated by money. They should be. And, you know, that you have to have the right program that has sustainability and motivates them, and it has to be competitive. You know, it also has to enable them to, you know, to earn a decent wage. And but you know, it's not all about money. You know, that, you know, providing the feedback and the attaboys, don't underestimate that. Everybody these days, especially the younger generations than me, you know, they're more motivated by making a difference, by having, you know, making a contribution, and that's important. Key four, skills and knowledge, right? So how are you now training them up and coaching them for continuous improvement? Key five, getting the right people in the first place and putting them in the right roles. Okay. And then key six is how do you keep them motivated? And then so you'll notice that the three on the top are three, as leaders, those of you who are leaders in your organization really have control over, how do you set the expectations and provide the feedback to them and provide them with the systems, tools, and resources, and how are you setting them up with the incentives, incentive programs. The three in the lower row are ones where employees have control over to some extent, okay? How they get their skills and knowledge. Usually it's on a management level where they're selecting people and assigning roles and managing them, and managing and coaching is really what keeps people motivated. So, these are the 6 keys to look at for performance improvement. All right, any questions about these? Okay. All right, so I'm going to launch another poll now. All right. Let's see. Can I launch this one? It's not letting me. All right, it's not letting me launch it. So I'm going to go back. All right, so I'm going to open it up. You can, which key, if you were to pick one, which would you say has the largest leverage on performance improvement out of these 6 keys?
I would say, I would say number 3.
Incentives, the incentive program. Okay.
Yeah, well, incentives can be more than just the incentive, the incentive compensation, the percent they earn. It could be incentives, could be career opportunities, it could be many things besides, just sales incentives. Let's put it that way.
Yep, for sure. They all of them are important. Okay, anybody else have any opinions on?
I'm going to agree with him on number 3. That's definitely my top choice.
Yeah, okay.
I agree, number 3.
Okay.
I think
right.
key number 1 is really important for the young. I've
Mhm.
got a lot of young salespeople.
Yeah.
Having clear expectations and consistently giving them feedback is really important. And I think it means a lot to them because they are, like Ken said, trying to learn and they want to perform. And if you're not constantly giving them feedback on what they're doing and then coaching and teaching them, they get lost.
Yeah. Okay. Number 1. Anyone else?
I'm just thinking from their perspective, it should be skills and knowledge. I mean, eventually the money, I understand it, but I've had sales guys that just want more money, but they don't want to invest anything. So at some point they have to understand that the smarter you get, the more you sell, and then the money comes.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, good. All right. So this model here, actually, I took from this book. It's Engineering Worthy Performance. It's an old book, and it's kind of dated. But this guy that wrote this book, Thomas Gilbert, he modeled those 6 keys, and according to Thomas, 80% of performance improvement is achieved by setting clear expectations and letting them know how they did. And that just really struck me as important, because I don't think we all do enough, are clear enough about really what we expect. And I always am struggling with getting all the information I want from my clients so that I can really understand how efficient their salespeople are at the different stages of the sales process, and how they can improve. And it really starts with, what do you expect in terms of the strategy, and how are you segmenting the markets so that you tell them what you expect, and Sean, you guys are in 10 different markets, and you have 8 different products and services. So coming into 2026, how do you really let the team know, okay, these are the markets where we expect you to grow the most. We expect that in these maybe it's in these regions, we expect this market to grow or gain this much market penetration, or this many new customers, or this is how much more revenue or gross margin we expect from these particular customers, because of which products or services that we expect to sell to them. And what are those expectations? When I first meet with a business owner, and again, I operate a lot in manufacturing, and I always ask them before we even decide if there's a fit for me to propose anything to them, is, what are your goals? And quite often it's like, well, based on how we did in 2025, I think we should be growing 15% this year. Okay, well, I mean, what's the magic to that number? And if they were telling me, well, these 2 markets are where our best opportunities are, because of what's happening with tariffs, or because of the external opportunities that are driving the market in these particular areas, and for these products, and that assessment of the market equals 15%. Well, okay, that makes sense to me. But when you're setting expectations, how is that tied into your market opportunities? Okay, and then what's the sales process that is going to how do these customers want to be interacted with, or what is the process that is going to enable you to achieve those goals? Okay, in each segment, and Kelly, your business is such a good example of that. I don't know if you mind we talking about it a little bit, because when I first met Kelly, they were in a market where they were selling through distribution partners into HVAC construction, right? And Kelly was she was tagged to go after the clean room market, right? Are you okay if I'm talking about this,
Yeah,
Kelly?
of course,
Okay.
yeah.
And we quickly determined that that clean room market was really design built by specific contractors who we could easily identify, and it just it really lended itself to a direct sale approach, right? You agree with that, Kelly?
Correct.
Right. So where they're used to going to distributors in all these different regions and expecting them to sell for them. First of all, these distributors probably weren't even all connected to these clean room design build contractors. And so Kelly started really going out and meeting with these contractors, really understanding what it is that they really wanted, and then working with them to give them specific solutions that actually gave them a really big competitive advantage. Okay. And so, that first, kudos to Kelly's company for identifying where one of their biggest opportunities are for market growth and increased penetration. But then the question is, okay, what are we going to offer them, and how can we provide something that is far superior to our competitors? And then what's the process for us through direct sales to really capture that market, in a much better way? Okay. And then, and when we first started, working together, the company, because Kelly was new to sales and new to the business, they gave her a goal. And when we started looking at, okay, what the results were, that goal was more specific into how many deals we were going to achieve. And it became a number that was substantially higher in results. And so how are you really setting these expectations? And any questions about this?
No.
Okay. And then sales process. This is what Mel was talking about. So, when you look at how are you qualifying, right? How are the top producers? If you, Sean, do you guys have certain salespeople that are experiencing much higher close rates than others?
Yes, that would be the three that have been running the company for the last 20 years. So there's the CEO, there's the head of engineering, there's our sales manager. And these guys have got, I'm going to say 90% of the experience. There's one or two of the sales guys have been there a fair bit of time too. But there's a lot of engineering in our systems, and that's the tough part. Even if you're a seasoned sales guy, I'll say like myself coming in, the engineering side of it, to grasp that, is the tough part. So you need their knowledge to be able to pull together some of these very complex quotes, or you'll make a mistake. Now,
Yeah.
I've been quoting stuff that relates to me, which is shredders, conveyors, material handling stuff that I know, but I don't know their system well enough. And that's the part I'm struggling with. And I'm sure some of our newer guys are doing the same thing, is getting that information.
Yeah. Okay.
Bob, you want to comment on that, Bob? You're mute. You're still mute.
Yeah, Bob, you're muted.
Yeah. There you go. No.
So
Bob's the sales manager and also some of the chief engineers that's been there for 20 some odd years, but you're still muted, Bob.
Okay. So you're
I'm gonna unmute. Sorry, I'm gonna unmute the group phone. I was getting that echo on my computer when I unmuted.
Oh, okay.
So I'm our director of sales, and I've been with Compass for 19 years. And to Sean's point, yeah, it is a difficult challenge because we are so custom, and we will develop and design really any type of process equipment or material handling equipment from one end of the spectrum to the other. And I would say, to add to some of the conversation with the sales cycle, that the projections and the leads, we're very reactionary to opportunities that come to us between myself, the CEO, and our chief technical officer. That's where a majority of them come through, and we tend to just distribute to the different team members rather than, and it's partly based on experience and building their experience. And we just distribute those jobs based on the basis of what we need support with, because the three of us can't support all the business we do. And we also get into a cyclical stage where we get hot and heavy into projects where we land an order, but then we're heavily engaged in engineering and not as hands off to where we can focus on other sales. So that's another portion that is a kind of from Sean's takeaway, that it limits the ability and attention to some extent of giving the sales guys additional knowledge base, because we're helping support some of the engineering aspects and that transition between the close of a project and then the kickoff of that order.
Yeah. Okay. So a couple things there. That's a lot to unpack. And you know, this is not uncommon. So I have a client that I've been working with for a few months now, and they sell metrology. And you know, it's very complex, and they were bought by a private equity company, and so they've added considerably to their sales team. And a lot of these people are new to the, and so you know, their goals, when you know I set goals with them, a lot of their goals, the new people, was just to learn about this stuff, learn about the
Yes.
applications, you know, and you know, but they've got to prospect, they've got to open up opportunities, they got to work with their distribution partners, because they've got a quota that they've got to meet. And
Right.
you know, and so you really need a team approach, you know, and so they bring in the, you know, the people in the region, their region, that have the experience and that are kind of mentoring and managing them. But and they also, you know, the sales manager is making himself available. So you know, you've got to, and you've got some application engineers too that you have to be using as a resource. But when you but I think a lot of it seems the difference really, and this is quite common and should be, is that the people that have been there for a long time have the relationships,
Yeah.
and they, you know, that the customers are now trained to come to you because they know you, and they know that you understand the business. And so that, you know, that then you know, and for your more seasoned salespeople, bogs them down. But justifiably, you know, you got to take care of your existing customers, and but then you become account managers, and
Right.
so there's just not enough net new coming in. So the question is, how do you then set up the systems that, and the go to market part of this, to make sure that there's new opportunities being opened up. And you know, and for you, Robert, you know, if you're a manager, you need to be a manager. And I see this all the time, you know, and you know, yes, you're probably you're one of the ones that Sean mentioned as the chief rainmaker there. But somebody needs to manage these people, and that's a full-time job. I don't know how many salespeople you have, but you know,
Well,
just even managing 4 people is, you know, if you have 7, that's a huge full-time job. And
Well, and the part of the growth gap there is that I was a sales manager and I got promoted to director of sales and haven't backfilled my spot yet. And that's a working process.
yeah,
Because right now, between the reps we have and my guys, I have five what 5 guys that I'm managing, along with a marketing manager that I manage, and I've got I think right now 2 with potential of 1 additional rep base that we're adding on to bring more business in.
And you also manage probably 10 of our biggest accounts on top of that.
Right.
yeah,
So, yeah,
yeah.
your day's full. Yeah.
Right. So I just wanted to, you know, just focus on where you guys said the biggest challenges were here, and it was in qualifying and closing. And so I think more, so we want to be looking at the newer folks. Okay. So out of the newer folks, or the ones that have been there for, let's say, 3 or 5 years, you know, whose close rate is higher, and what are they doing in terms of being able to really find out, is there a compelling reason for these people to change, you know, getting their commitment, how they manage the decision process, are they presenting to decision makers, you know, do they present their proposals, or do they send them, and you know, are they qualified these opportunities properly, and what are they doing that makes them more successful, and replicating that, you know, do they find out if there's a budget, and are they on the same page? And so what are they doing in these areas to make sure that they got a real deal, and that you know, they're getting decisions, yes or no, and getting them from people who can say yes or no. And so that is an area to look at. but I think, you know, you also said that reactive versus proactive is a challenge. That, you know, 4 people said that, and you know, a lot of that is, okay, spending too much time with existing customers, which you need to do. And then the question is, what is your process now to get more net new and make sure that you're getting everything you can from your existing customers, the one that are worth spending time with, you know, not the lower value customers. And then, you know, again, you know, 4 people said reactive versus proactive, and 3 people said sales cycle. So that's really, you know, who is opening up new opportunities more so than others, and what is it that they're doing that is leading to that success, and how can we replicate that? And is it moving people around, changing roles, or bringing somebody new in? Okay. So, and then how are you giving them the feedback that they need? Okay. And, you know, this is really a bone of contention for me, because, you know, no CRM gives you ratios, and sales performance is measured in ratios. Okay. You know, what's the average deal size, dollars per sale? What's the proposal close rate? You know, how many of those proposals are turning into business? You know, how many first meetings, new opportunities is it taking to close a deal? How many contacts is it taking to get a meeting? How many dials does it take to get a contact? How many leads? What's your lead conversion ratio? And these things need to be, this is what we need to be looking at to determine, you know, how efficient they are. And then look at what is more efficient, and then training up to increase these ratios. Okay. So we want to be looking at, what are your exemplars doing? Who has got the highest ratios in any of these areas? And how does that compare with the average performance? You know, and I've got, you know, it's Olympic season. You know, I should have a skier here, but when you look at Olympic swimmers, the difference between top performance and next in line is hundredths of a second. Okay. Hundreds of a second. Same thing with skiing. These people are like fractions of a second, means winning or 4th place, you know. And, you know, you've got probably some much bigger discrepancies between top performance and average performance, right? So when you look at, okay, what is the average number of meetings that your top performer is getting? All right, they're doing 25 meetings a month, and then your average performers are doing 8. That's a 3 times potential opportunity. Okay, you could triple your average performers by looking at what is it that your top producers are doing. And across the board, you can be looking at this and saying, okay, where is it that we really need to focus, and what is it leading to the difference, in addition to, okay, they've got the better relationships, they've got the experience, and then what do you really need to train up to be able to improve? Okay. And they'll never catch up to the exemplars. They're always going to be wanting to improve. So they'll never catch them, but that's not the point. The point is, you want to say, what's causing those gaps, and then where should we focus to improve? And, you know, what is the breakdown between your team, top, middle, and low? Okay. And where is your best opportunity for improvement? Okay. And it's really not necessarily your top producers. They're doing well already. And it's not in the really underperformers either. Okay. Although they do need more attention. It's the people in the middle that are meeting expectations, yet there could be a 3x improvement between what they're doing and your top producers. Okay. That's really where your best opportunities are, and where we should be focusing. Okay. Any questions about this? So, any questions? We have some more workshops that we're going to be doing, but I'm going to, we've got 7 more minutes. Any questions or anything that comes out that?
I just got a comment. So, as you know, our sales team pretty closely. So with Phil, he's having a good year numbers wise, but his close ratio is awful, and he's quoting up a storm. He's quoting anything and everything. So I sat down with him, and he said, "Well, look at my number. But you're burning through the application engineers left and right." So it's funny, we have a newer application engineer that supports Phil. And I had a one-on-one with him, and he said, "I just thought that's the way everybody was." Like Phil was quoting like $5 million in 2025, and he had like a 12-15% close ratio. And I was like, "No, that's not the way, typically on the aftermarket side, we're 50% close ratio because it's a have to, and we typically don't have a lot of competition." And so that was an interesting conversation, and I'm the numbers guy, right? I'm always beating him up about numbers, and then he says, "Look at my number."
Right. Well,
So
it's numbers that where it is now because he's got new accounts that Ed gave him.
yeah,
Okay,
no,
that's what.
I try to mention that. I got a cross-eyed look, but because Ed wasn't there, Ed was on vacation. But yeah, I had all the data, and it's just it's funny because they when they have the number, they look at it. When they don't have the number, it's like, "Yeah, I'm really trying."
Yeah, well, so the what I would ask, I'm not working with Phil, but I would ask him, okay, who are the decision makers?
Yeah,
Okay. And, he's also, so a little bit, Dom's got 2 markets. They're in aftermarket, which is replacement, which is more the facilities managers and property managers, and then new construction, which is a completely different market. So they, different people, different process, right? They've got to, get specified by consulting engineers, and then they get to go sell it to the mechanical and plumbing contractors. Okay. Completely different people, different markets, but they may be the same companies, but different people within those companies. Okay. And they restructured. They restructured about a year ago, or maybe a little longer. And so now, where they had a separate team in capital versus aftermarket, their salespeople are doing both. So now this is all new to Phil because he was an aftermarket salesperson. Okay. And my question would be, when you go into these mechanical contractors, which are new accounts for him, does he really know who's making the decision? And I'll
yeah,
bet I wouldn't get too many answers. And so my guess is what he's doing is he's going in and he's got some great relationships with the estimators, because the estimators need to talk to him because they need a price for him to submit their proposal to try to win the deal from the general contractor. So yes, they're going to be easy to get a hold of, right? They need
yeah,
them, right? But then
yeah,
he gives them the quote, right? When
yeah.
the
But
project
yeah,
manager is making a decision. So how many project
yeah,
managers is he meeting with, and how often,
yeah.
right?
So you said a couple great things in there. I'm a big advocate of don't send the quote, make them ask and meet with them versus just send the quote. Once you send the quote, they don't need you anymore. So,
You got it.
uh, and if they're not going to sit down with you, they're not buying. So, but yeah, and Ed will laugh, but it was like a 6-year-old soccer game when we merged the Salesforce. They all went to the capital side and started selling and getting booking orders, and then they all went to the aftermarket side. And I'm like, guys, hold on, spread out, cover the whole field, because we put gaps in the aftermarket pipeline, and we paid for it dearly. So we're figuring that one out in
Yeah.
2026.
But I
Right.
think that Dominic made a good point about sending the quotes without a meeting. And I think that gets back to I know I struggle with that with the sales process. So, that every salesman knows you don't do that. All right. I mean, that's part of the sales process. you have a meeting and then, you know, you have a meeting and then you bring the quote to the meeting, you know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
right, right. And so that's, I think, you know, you need to really cultivate multiple allies in there. And this is what I tell Rich, because Rich, I am working with, and I'm like, Rich, you need to know the organization chart, right? You need to know everybody. And, you know, if you're going to quote a job, who's the project manager, and find ways to go in there and talk to them about the job, you know?
Yeah.
And how decisions are made, and for which, you know, level of decision. And he's drank the Kool-Aid on that.
Yeah, we
So
you know, we had the last few guys that were here that we let go. They would just send the quote, and we'd they would tell us, yeah, we're going to use that, and then we wouldn't hear back from them, and it was like, I have a feeling they weren't being honest. So they were taking our quote, using it to get cheaper boosters, and then just never circling back. So we've at least kind of put the kibosh on that stuff. So
right,
uh,
right,
Ed's done a great job crawling us back into that market, but
yeah,
it took a lot of work, and therefore we took our eye off the aftermarket ball and paid for it in December. So
yeah,
back at
yeah,
it in 2026.
yeah. All right. Any other comments on, you know, what are some of the things that you're taking away today that you're going to do differently? Any comments there?
I'm just going to reinforce what Dominic said about the education, the employee education. Not only are we, you know, talking to the same contractor who has multiple trades, but now we're introducing Danfoss drives into what we can sell, which is uh, totally outside of what we've been doing. So we got a lot of education, a lot of training to do, and you know the future's pretty bright if we can put the right person in the right space.
Yeah, the key here is, how are you guys being a resource for these contractors? You know, how, rather than just a price, how are you being a resource? Because the more you can be a resource and really add value to anything they're doing, then, you know, you now can, you know, get conversations, have a reason for these project managers and the vice presidents there to talk to you about projects, and how are you helping them? Maybe packaging up systems to help them win a deal, or at least get a better margin, or, you know, giving them some market intelligence on jobs where you got specified, and then you become a resource, and then leveraging those relationships you have on the plumbing side to have them introduce you to the people on the HVAC side, because that's really where your biggest growth opportunities are, because you're not in that market as much, right? And it's the same company, just different people, you know? So a lot of opportunities there for you guys.
Very good.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Anyone else? I really appreciate, let's stop the